Okay, so on this episode, I've got Fabio Torres. I've probably already mispronounced his last name a little bit and doesn't roll off the tongue the way it should.
It's fine. I find it quite hard to actually just introduce myself in here just because like people tend to either spell it or say it in the Spanish way, which would be like Torres, but like the actual way of saying it is Fabio Torres. So like the way that the R's roll is it's too hard for people to get it, so you kind of just butcher your own name for the sake of, it's okay. Just introduce yourself that way, and people will get you. Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah.
What's actually before I go into that, would you be able to give a quick overview of where you're at the moment, what you're focusing on, and where you like to be, maybe?
Oh my God!
Pick one out of three or all
no,
three.
no pressure, no pressure. Okay, fair play. I think that right now, like from a creative standpoint, like I've been, trying to deep dive into a lot of my interests. So like been getting back into like producing music. Recently I've really taken up to dancing, just like trying to do a lot of activities that get me in places where I can spend time with people rather than being just so much on my own corner. I find that I get a lot of energy by being surrounded by people that bring me that type of good vibe. But yeah, I think that besides that, just like work wise, I work in digital marketing, like one of your previous guests as well, which I know, Jahan. Quite funny. I don't know how much overlap there will be because obviously the whole dancing stuff as well too. But I'm overall in a general good place, just like curious to explore new things and try new things with people. So
Nice. One big thing I really wanted to ask you about, I would like to just jump straight there, is in the last couple of years, you've recently been producing music on the side. And my understanding is that's like a skill that you had, which you then, leveled up and then have started putting it out to the world. And it's particularly that last part around putting it out to the world and overcoming that, as well as overcoming various dips in the creative process. How do you approach that?
I think it's so hard for you to be passionate about something and put it out there and expose yourself to scrutiny because, quite often you are your biggest critic. And some people might look at what you're doing and they'll be super impressed by it, by, just the fact that you even had the guts to put something out there. Likewise, as I told you before, like in our conversations, like I think it's super cool that you're actually starting something new, like, and you delving into the podcasting world, just because I think the world needs more doers rather than just people that consume stuff. Not only that, I also think it's super important for you to do things so then you realize and appreciate much more when you see anything, right? So for example, for me, the thing with music, like I was super passionate about it. And I always thought like one day I would actually like to create something that I would like to listen to myself, right? And just an FYI in terms of like creating, I don't actually rap or do anything. It's literally just producing instrumentals, like things that I kind of like because I know how to play a couple of instruments, like self-taught, not like a virtuoso at it by any means. But I think that just by being able to do a little bit with some creativity, you can create something fresh or something that at least you particularly would enjoy. And if you, as yourself, say use yourself as a market, like I can create something, then someone else might also enjoy it. So yeah, that's the thought process.
What are the three instruments that you play?
So I play the guitar. That's my first one. So acoustic guitar. I can play the bass and a little bit of piano as well. Yeah.
And of those three instruments, which did you find hardest to self-taught and how did you go about that?
I think it's quite interesting because there is an aspect of compounding when you start learning things like this, especially from a musical perspective, right? So I started playing the guitar first, just because a friend of mine had a guitar laying about at home and we saw this really cool, at the time I think it was an anime that had a really cool Spanish song and we were like, oh cool, we should try and learn that. And when we saw the YouTube tutorial, it was like, nah, it's way too far off. So then we just typed in like, oh, basic guitar songs and stuff. And then from then on, it was just kind of like the bounce back between two people kind of trying to learn something. And then I managed to get one of my neighbors to borrow me his guitar. And yeah, my mom didn't love it because I was just doing noise in the house. But yeah, so just the fiddling and playing with something without the expectation of it going somewhere led me to a position where I was kind of comfortable to just be able to play. And then I started getting interested in trying to play other different instruments. That's when I started to kind of look into the piano, because a lot of songs that I like had the piano as well, which I found much harder to kind of pick up. Potentially because I was already going into it with the thought process of I want to be good at it, so I'll be able to play something. Whereas when I was playing the guitar initially, it was just the game. I didn't really thought much of it. It was like, oh, I've learned how to play one thing and whatever. So, and then the bass, I think the bass is a bit of an extension of what you can already do with the guitar. So I find it easier to play at a like rudimental, like basic level, not to a super proficient level, but it would be enough for me to be able to produce a song and then layer a bass line to then just kind of make a song a bit more complex. So, yeah.
That makes sense. And the kind of musical element in you, did that come from somewhere specifically? You know, was there a specific influence, either, you know, outside of your immediate environment, or within your family or your close friends when you were growing up?
No, I think that because like nobody really in my family plays instruments,
Mm.
besides my younger brother, but then he followed me in what I was doing naturally. But I guess I would have to give a bit of credit to my dad because he was always playing different types of genres of music in the house. Like, I don't know, one morning you can wake up listening to Celine Dion, and the next time it's like, I don't know, Scorpions or Dark Strides, and then you get Bob Marley, like something super random, right? So by getting your ear accustomed to so many different types of sounds, like you subconsciously start picking up things. And I felt like that kind of helped dictate my music taste as I was growing up. Until then, you start seeing music that plays on the TV, and then you start discovering the internet, and it's like, oh wow, so this song is related to this, or like this song sampled this. Like my whole brain like just exploded when I discovered the concept of sampling, which was something that to me was like mind blowing, like so changing. Yeah.
I think you were also the person who gave me an appreciation of sampling in music and how, you know, so many modern day songs. I won't give an example because I'll ruin it, and maybe you'll have some better examples. Actually, come from like some very old songs, and then those songs themselves are also sampled off another song, and then it actually goes back in these like, you know, 20, 30 year cycles.
I think it's so interesting now because back in the day, maybe we wouldn't know that songs were being sampled because they were so old and predated us. But now you're hearing songs that we grew up with being sampled on current records, and you're like, no, that's just wrong. Like, am I getting that old? I don't know. But like, kids are like, no, I knew this one first versus that one first, you know? So I think with sampling, there is a way of doing it personally for me that I find that is tasteful, right? So when you're actually creating something, you're paying homage to what came before, but you adding a little bit of your own twist into it. Whereas there's a lot of songs nowadays that just kind of pretty much rip off what was done originally, and then just, you know, it's just more of a cash grab type thing. I think that there was a lot more emphasis on artistry back then than it is now because everything is done for streams, everything is done for views, and because the internet is such a global thing, it's so easy for you to get started doing something that it becomes very hard to actually find stuff that is authentic, good, and genuine, in my opinion. Yeah.
Interesting. How do you go about finding that kind of stuff?
Um, it's quite interesting because like it depends on what sort of things you are consuming on a regular basis, right? So because my music taste is varied, and I know that a lot of people like to say, "Oh yeah, like I listen to a bit of everything," you know,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
little bit cringe, but I genuinely would love that Spotify would give me the breakdown of the genres that I listen to because they like it's so much different stuff. Like I could be listening to some Latin pop music, and then all of a sudden it's like some new metal stuff. Not that I would just stay into one particular lane, but I would be listening to something and it was like, I actually like this particular sound in here. I don't know why to explain like why that really stands out to me, but like I can just get the appreciation as to why it was done that way. But more to answer specifically your question in terms of like how I expand my taste. Well, definitely recommendations from friends, like people that I already trust their taste. Like if they tell me, "Yo, go check this album, something new came out." I listen to a lot of podcasts related to the music industry stuff. Like that's kind of like what I'm really into. And also, I generally appreciate the radio function on Spotify. I know that like sometimes it gets a little bit of a backlash just because like algorithms can be very like tight and always show you the things that they think that you would particularly like. But sometimes just break the algorithm. Like pick a song that you probably wouldn't listen to and click on a radio and just see random stuff that comes up. Like it's really fun. do that.
I like that. Yeah, in terms of the algorithm sometimes working against you, is I listen to a lot of lo-fi music, but then I'll start like a song radio for something, and then sometimes I just get like recommended a lo-fi version
like,
of that song.
No, okay, yeah,
Yeah, which is good, but also not good. Yeah, interesting. So in terms of you yourself putting together some of the music and then putting it on Spotify because your stuff is available on Spotify, how did you go about that process from knowing nothing about it, or at least knowing the instruments, and then putting it on Spotify?
So you're asking me about the journey and how I started actually like posting my stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's quite interesting because all of this came from the opportunity that you know it was an unfortunate time for everyone, but like the pandemic really opened doors for a lot of people to try out new things and to really delve deep into things that they felt like maybe I could find a new passion or I could try and learn something new about myself, right? So I never really considered the idea of actually creating and posting music until, during this period in the pandemic, I started to actually play stuff, and I had some friends that basically they had this YouTube channel where they, do car related stuff. And I was kind of jokingly talking with one of them. I was like, yo, look, I got Logic Pro. I could just like make a beat for one of your videos. And it's like, oh no, I challenge you to actually make one, which is something that is super cool. I feel like when you have the right people around you, they will kind of push you towards the right direction. And that was one of them. It just so happened that I had another friend in that circle that is actually a guitarist. And then during the pandemic, he was also making a transition into becoming more of like besides being a session guitarist, actually producing instrumentals for artists, right? So he was really serious about this stuff. And I kind of just jokingly talked to him about it. Like, yo, maybe one day we should just like get together and do something. So one thing, in my phone, I probably have, I don't know, voice notes of me playing the guitar from like back in 2012. Like there's just this whole catalog of like, I would play something, I would like it, and I would keep it, but then I would never be able to do anything with it because I didn't understand the process of actually how to produce. But during this time, there was this opportunity where, I just went to his house and I was like, look, I have a couple of things that I played before and stuff. And like, he picked out one that he really liked. And he was like, can you play that again? I was like, sure. And then like, he set up the mic and everything and we started playing the song. And then he was like, he had this little keyboard and it was like putting different sounds. And he was like, just taking me through the whole interface and the platform and how it worked. It was Ableton for people that know about music. Like that's just another variation of like, GarageBand, Logic Pro, whatever.
And to confirm, these sorts of platforms are very much like you plug a mic in and then you record the sound. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So it's one of the things that like, as I was saying, like it's so easy and accessible for anyone to kind of jump in and create their own thing. Is it going to be good? That's up to you, right? You need to spend the time and put in the hours to actually be able to create something that sounds like something, right? But it was really good for me to have that musicality background already and then have someone who was already like well versed in it. And then the two of us came together, and because we had similar tastes, like we really gelled during the session. Like I was playing something, then he pulled out the bass and we're playing something on top. We put some horns on it. I was like, whoa, this sounds epic. This is so cool. And like, it felt like being a kid again, like kind of like how I told you that when I started playing the guitar with my friend, and it was just like, it was a game. So that to me felt like a game, like, oh, like I could just put this and this together. And it sounds like this is like playing with Legos. And then jokingly, after the session, asked my friend, oh, can you just like give me like a file or whatever? And I went home and I was listening to it and I was hyping out like, this is cool,
Unreal,
right?
Unreal.
And
how long was this file? Was this just like one long file of the
yeah,
session?
so like then we processed the whole thing and like chop it off in like an intro, like a chorus type thing, like an outro, like, so it probably was like maybe 1 or 2 minutes, like something really short, like, cause you just kind of loop the instrumental. And then jokingly, I just sent it to my other friends that do the YouTube channel for the car stuff. And they didn't really say anything at first. Like I just saw a scene. I was like, wow, I didn't thought it was that bad, but yeah, whatever. So the next day I'm working, and the dude asked me like, yo, have you seen the new video that we posted? And I was like, nah. I was like, go check it out. And I click on the video and it had my song. And like, dude, when I tell you that, like, it brought tears to my eyes because it was like, whoa, like they really fucked with it. Like sorry, whatever. Like, yeah. They're like, they really enjoyed it. And like, at the end of the video, literally, they put my Instagram handle and they were like, dude, this was so sick. We want more. Like the video ended up like being amazing, right? But obviously, I didn't say that I was the one that did it by myself. Obviously, I did it with my friend. So I was kind of like, it's a bit lame that we didn't give recognition to my other friend. But then I spoke to him and he was like, oh, no, that's all good, whatever. And I was so hyped because people actually started DMing me, asking me, where can I listen to this song? Like people were in the comments
Oh, that's
talking
cool.
about it.
That's cool.
And I was like, whoa, I did not expect to have this type of like validation off of something that I just did like jokingly. Like I thought it was good because I enjoyed it. In my mind, I'm like, maybe this thing is not that great, that is not that great, or whatever. But it was just so fun to put it out there and then actually to get that positive reinforcement, even if it was just from my friends. And if nobody liked it, like at least they did, right? So for me, that was like an amazing plus. But after that happened, then I got super hyped because everybody was asking me for it. And I was like so quick to be like, yo, let's put it on SoundCloud or on YouTube or whatever so people can listen to it. And I spoke to my friend, the one that helped me produce, and he was kind of like, man, I'm not sure. Like, because he had such a high standard of what he was already doing that for him, that wasn't at that level. And he was like, I don't think like whatever. So like he kind of shut it down a little bit, but I was so grateful that he did that because after a while and more people talking about it and everything, like I then went back to him like, oh, if he actually wanted to like release it because like people are enjoying it, like, and bear in mind, these friends of mine, their YouTube channel now is close to like 1 million followers. Like it's getting really big.
Nice.
So I told him like, look, people actually want to hear this thing. And it was like, okay, cool. Like come to my house. Like we can like kind of fix it and try to do something new. Right. And then when we did that process, he actually explained to me like, look, if you actually want to release this, probably would be best for you to sign up to a proper platform that would distribute your music. And then you actually can get royalties for this because he's in the business. He knows how these things work. And the entry point was like super cheap. I think that you could pay like a tenner a year to use a service called DistroKid, non-sponsored, or sponsor me if you want. But it was super interesting, like the way that he explained to me the ins and outs and like how you could actually make money off of it. And I thought like, I never even considered that, right? But just the idea of actually having your music on all streaming platforms. So like whatever it is, like you can go Apple Music, Spotify, like anything. Like you can Shazam my music. That's how to the level of it, right?
Interesting.
So once all of that process kind of took place, then I started like working on more music. Not necessarily because I wanted to like, you know, I'm trying to make an album or a living off of this, but the guys on that YouTube channel gave me another challenge. And at the time they were like, hey, look, we have this car and we need a theme song for it. Like, I think it would be cool if you could write something for it. And then I just like kind of had a couple of things in terms of sounds, and I put something together and I sent it to them, and it was like, dude, this is cool. We want to use it, but like you just need to make it a bit longer, blah blah blah, and then boom. And that was the first song that I did by myself. So I had those two songs, and then when I posted them on Spotify or whatever, and I shared it on Insta, and people were like, wait, you produce music? I was like, kind of. And then it started getting traction and some, you know, decent views, like streams, and then I was like, okay, cool. Now, if I've done this, I actually want to produce a whole body of work. So I started working in a lot of different songs, and it got to a point where like, well, I have like maybe 12 songs or whatever. Like, let me put it out. Nice. And that's kind of how it happened.
Unreal. And those different songs, both the first two and the whole package, how did you go about naming them?
Oh man, yeah, the naming, it's so cringe to try and name something when you start off, but I always go off of a feeling, right? So it was easy with the first two because they both were theme songs for cars, basically. So I just named them after the cars. So the first one was for a fair lady. It's a Datsun. Like for people that know about cars, it's a beautiful car. So we just called it Fair Lady. We even got like some artwork for it. Like we did everything proper. Like because my friend was like, no, if you're gonna release it, do it right. Like so we got people, like we mix, master it, and everything. So like it sounded good, in my opinion. And then the second one, it was a little van, like a Japanese van. It's called a K van, but they gave it a nickname of Kevin. And it's like the mascot for their YouTube channel, Night Ride, by the way. And it blew up because it was like the theme song for the new car that they did that everybody, like when I say across the world, is like seriously, like they nearly got first place in a competition to make the little van a Hot Wheels. Like that's how big it became.
That's cool.
And then the song was kind of attached to the cars, so like then people would kind of come up to me, it's like, oh, you're the guy that did that. I was like, whoa, how'd you know that? Like, so, but yeah. But with the other 12 songs, it was kind of like either it would be the feeling that I was getting in the moment, or when you're actually producing things as well, you can either play the sounds yourself, or you can actually use existing sounds to then create something. So like, for example, when we were talking about sampling, right? So I can sample a particular sound, or like my friend, for example, because he was a session guitarist, he creates music packs where he has a lot of like melodies and different types of guitar sounds. And then I could use that and layer it with drum sounds, like bass sounds or vocals. And then you can create a whole new thing. So that's why I equated music earlier to like playing with Legos, because like you pick one piece, you put another one thing together, and like sometimes those packs would come with a name that was like, oh, Midnight Dream, I don't know, and I'll be like, okay, cool, so this is Midnight Dream, so something random, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So one of them's called Midnight Dream.
I just said that randomly.
Okay,
that's not one of the names, but like it could have been. Yeah, it could have been.
And the names, I'm still not 100% sure where the actual name itself. You just you were just like, I'm gonna call it that.
Yeah. So imagine there's I don't know. There's like I think one of my songs is called like Pac-Man's Revenge or something, and there's like this weird sound on the song that goes like quack, 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 quack. It sounds like Pac-Man, so I was like, nice. It's Pac-Man's Revenge or whatever. Cool. There was one that was kind of like break dancey, so I was like, oh, Breaker's Paradise, like just chuck something into it, like that would make it somewhat recognizable. I think it's important as well the way that you name stuff, because if someone is searching for a particular vibe, I don't know, for example, when you go and listen to music, and if you see an album, or if you just like something comes randomly and listen to it, but like, do you ever pick something because the name seems interesting?
Like one of your songs is Something Paradise.
Yeah, okay. Breaker's Paradise, I think it might be, yeah. Is
it Breaker's Paradise? Or is that Tropical? Something?
Tropical, yeah. Man, I don't even know my own shit. Like, yeah. Oh, but you do, yeah. I respect that. Yeah. Yeah, I know which one. Yeah,
and that definitely has the vibe of like when I listened to it, it definitely felt like, this is very specific, but when you're in like Grand Theft Auto game and you're like driving along the beach,
that's the vibe that it gives you.
It's kind of the music that I would imagine like popping in the background.
Interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
Good. No, yeah, because I think that like giving something a particular name or packaging it in a particular way really helps put the project forward, right? Because like it could be something great, but if I call it track number 1, like I don't know what this is, like it doesn't invite people to come in. So I think that one of the things that I really learned during that process when we did the first song, and my friend really told me, no, if you're gonna do it right, and that stuck with me, was if I'm going to put something together and I want people to care about it, I should care about it too. And I should put an equal amount of effort as I would expect people to put towards listening to it, right? So that's where I felt that, some people ask me, oh, why didn't you just like release more individual songs? And I felt like, yeah, but that doesn't have as much as an appeal as me saying, well, I released a body of work and you can listen to this from beginning to end, and it's meant to be an experience. So it's not super long. It's like 20 minutes. Everything is instrumental music that I personally would listen if I would be working and I just want something to be in the background. Fine. And there's just an appeal to say, okay, this is your own project. It's called Mindset Reset, by the way, talking about names, which was for me super important, which was kind of like stop thinking so much about what other people think, or like being so blocked in terms of expressing yourself because you were afraid of judgment. So for me, it was like really a mindset reset of me like, no, I'm going to do something because I like it. And if people don't like it, it's fine. But like, at least I get to say that I've done it. And it's a personal win for me. So yeah.
That makes sense. And then that segues nicely into a topic around when to release something versus not, as in like perfection versus practice or quantity. And like, how do you find those balance, particularly with those songs? At what point do you get to a point where you're happy with it and then you put it out? Or is there an element of like, okay, I can't, spend the entire life to keep tweaking this. It needs to go out.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because with music in particular, it's never done. It's never done, because like you can always tweak one sound or add another thing or remove another thing. So sometimes you just gotta do it and put it out there and like forget about it. Like, okay, see what it does, put it out in the world. But for me in particular, when I start creating these sort of things, I want to do something that has a particular standard, at least, like where I feel like, okay, this is not either super repetitive or it's like feeling very uninspiring. Like, but then that's up to my personal preference, right? Because I might be able to release something and someone is going to be like, yo, this is super cool. And I'm like, I'm not really feeling it that much. But for me, the important thing when I create something is I want to make sure that I can stand for it, right? So if I put something out there in the world and someone says, this is trash, I was like, okay, cool, but I liked it. Whereas if I put it out and I didn't particularly enjoy it or did it for quote unquote the wrong reasons, if someone trashes it, now I'm gonna feel uncomfortable and I'm gonna be like,
Interesting, interesting. That so I really like that as a tangent into doing something for yourself rather than necessarily for other people. How have you maybe applied that, or wish you'd applied that to other areas in life?
oh, that's a great question. That is a great question. I think that in general, I tend to be the type of person that I struggle to start things, right? Just because I'm either thinking about how long it's going to take to get to the finished product, or I'm afraid of failing, which is a big thing that, like, for a long time, and I'm not saying that I'm like completely over it, but like it's still a big thing for me, because when I do something, I want to do it right. I want to make sure that like it comes across in a way that, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. But sometimes you gotta be a fool until you become a master, right? You're not gonna learn something overnight. And I feel like in my particular hobbies growing up, I was always the type to, I gravitate towards what I feel like I naturally take up to. So like, I'm good at this, so I'm going to stick with it. But as soon as I felt like, oh, I'm either not progressing or I'll try something new that would be very difficult, I would just kind of open my hands and be like, I'm not doing it. Which is why it kind of like also interesting segue, like dancing, for example. I wasn't really good at dancing in pairs. Like I feel like I got rhythm and I can dance by myself or whatever.
Okay, yeah,
But
because
then,
definitely, I've definitely seen you dance, and I was like, oh my god,
nah,
Fabio's absolutely killing it. And I was like,
that's not, no, thank you. I appreciate that. No, but like it's completely different for you being able to dance by yourself and just having rhythm and vibing. But dancing with a partner, having to lead, especially as a man, because you have to lead the woman, is completely different, right? Because you need to give her cues and you need to show that you know what you're doing. And then it also kind of becomes a bit self-conscious, because it's like, oh, what if she's kind of like, oh man, he doesn't know how to dance, and she's off put by you. So I was always in my head whenever I would go and dance with a girl, whether it be like salsa, bachata, kizomba, or whatever, or any of these like pairing dances, and I would kind of be like, okay. But last year, literally, I took up to it because I was like, cool, I really want to try and do something that I'm not naturally good at, and I need to put some effort to do. And I find it very rewarding when you actually just allow yourself to not be good at something, right? But in a sense, like you also need to balance it with like, okay, cool, I'm being good at other things, but like, yeah, it's okay if I check in something that I'm not that good at. So then I naturally then get that progression, and I feel like, oh, I actually achieved something in this space. Yeah.
I really like that balance. Really like that balance actually. And how have you found it then in terms of entering these classes? How long does it take for you to feel like, you know what, actually I'm pretty good at this. You know what, I'm actually getting somewhere and can maybe even do it with a degree of spontaneity rather than set routines.
No, I think that what I really got from it, not even necessarily just the dance itself, is just the mindset of being like, okay, it's okay for you to try and to not be that good at it. Because like I felt like so much of my personal, well, not personal, so much of my personality was like, oh, like Fabio is good at this, Fabio is good at that. And then when people would not perceive me as someone who would be good at something, I would feel like, damn, I'm fucking it up, or like I'm not being good or whatever. So having this space where now I'm like clearly still in a beginner intermediate level, I'm not the guy that is gonna go and do crazy spins and whatever, but I still know how to do a basic, and that's fine, because you can't be good at everything. And like having to learn that was such a big turning point for me, because it's like, oh, it's okay for you to just be average at something and then put some time onto it and eventually get better at it. Because like when it goes back to the whole old saying of like, you know, a jack of all trades is better than a master of all, or I don't know how to say it. Probably you know it better than me. But yeah, I really stuck to it because it's just like, look, I just want to learn how to do one thing. If I'm not good at it straight away, it's fine. I need to give myself some grace. Yeah.
Okay, I like that quote. What and give yourself some grace. Can you expand on that? Like, what does that mean for you, both in your head and in your heart?
Oh, deep, deep, deep. No, I think it's like you gotta be a friend to yourself, right? So if I don't know, say you start working out and you're not really good at it, but like if a friend of yours was doing something, would you just discourage them and be like, oh man, you shouldn't even try that, like you're not gonna ever be fit or jacked or whatever? Like no, like give someone positive reassurance and encouragement because they are making a step in their journey. So why wouldn't you do the same for yourself? If I'm starting out with something, whether it's music, dancing, I don't know, whatever, like I need to be able to be realistic with the time that it takes to be good at something and also not be so preoccupied with how people perceive me. Because I think that what's happening now, especially like for these younger generations, is that, imagine if you go to a dance class. I once went to like more of a traditional kind of like hip hop type dance class, right? And I saw a lot of people in there that clearly they were beginners, but their main concern was setting up their phone to show that they knew how to dance. Like, you don't know how to do the steps yet, so why are you trying to film this to show to the world that like, oh, I'm a good dancer or whatever? Like, you got to pay your dues, right? So if you want to document something to show your progress, as in like, oh, I started here and I'm doing this, I think that's super cool. But like, don't try to act cool when you're already like not there yet. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of like my thought process when I think about like give yourself grace, have patience with yourself, because it's like you're not gonna be good at everything overnight. You might be a bit more musically inclined or dancing inclined or whatever, any type of hobby, but it takes time to get there, right?
Cool. Interesting. I want to pick up on one thing that you said there around the sense of identity, as in
Yeah.
you being good at different things. Can you talk a bit about your background in terms of coming over from Portugal to London? When did you come over? How do you think about that transition in terms of like where is home now and in the future?
I mean, how can I tackle that without going in a crazy big tangent? I would say that like imagine when you're young, the way that you kind of connect with people or you make friends, like you want validation by maybe being able to do things or like having similar hobbies and interests, right? So this is why I was kind of equating like my personality being the person that knew how to do things, because that's how I approach people. I thought that if people would want to be my friend would be because I would be able to, I don't know, oh, he's a sick skateboarder, or he's a really good guitarist or whatever. Like I picked up a guitar because I wanted to impress a girl, really. But like then
I empathize with that.
I didn't really.
I won't even say my story.
Okay, cool. But yeah, no, like the thing is, like obviously I started playing with my friend, but then like I wanted to carry on playing because this is cool. You go like I grew up next to the beach, right? And like you go take the guitar and like I want to be the guy that's like playing or whatever. But it's just interesting to see how sometimes your entry point doesn't end up being like the final destination, right? Because you might start something for a particular reason, but then you just generally, maybe by a happy accident, you're like, well, I actually enjoy the process of learning and getting better at this.
I really like that just as like a general thing in terms of
Yeah.
like the reason that you got into something doesn't need to be the reason that you continue by any means. And that in and of itself is a good impetus to just try different things and be a bit shit at them for a while.
Because you never know what's really going to stick. You never really know what's really going to put you in a different place to get to know different people, right? So I've been in the UK now for like 13 years. And when I moved over, I started skateboarding again. That's how I started making friends because, I was in my house at the time and I remember I was just hearing kids skateboarding downstairs. And so I kind of went down. I was like, oh, can I try or whatever? And they looked at me and was like, oh yeah, you're cool, you can do tricks, like you should come hang out with us again. Like the whole thing of like, oh, you're able of doing stuff, so like you get an entry point into a new space, right? So I started skateboarding with these kids. They got me a whole setup like full of like random parts. It's like, oh, you don't have a board, cool, we get you something, which is super nice of them, like amazing. And this is where I actually
What age are you at this time?
I was 18.
18.
18, yeah. So like I pretty much like in Portugal, I started skating when I was around like 16, 17. So it hadn't even been that long. But I was coming over here, like I kind of just decided, whatever, I'll drop it. Even though I was kind of passionate about it. I liked it, but I thought it's a new space. I'll probably figure out something new to do. But it just felt like I kept being drawn to it. So in that moment, then I started like hanging out with those kids. They're probably a bit younger than me, maybe 15, 16, until I met one of the dudes that this is now full circle. One of my best friends, Mark, he skateboarded at the time, like when we met. And now he's the guy who runs that YouTube channel that I told you that does the car stuff. Right. So it's the importance of like we were saying, for example, so I picked up a hobby, not necessarily because it was the best reason to enter it or whatever, but like that got me access to a new space where I met new people that then later on had a profound impact in my life. And he's one of those people. Right. So yeah, I thought that like it was really interesting, like how if you would have looked at us at the time, like he was like this punk dude, like pierced up, long hair, and like I'm just this dweeb, like just random kid. And like we really hit it off. We got along pretty well, and then we started spending a lot of time together, skateboarding together and stuff. And yeah, like with anything, I think that the beautiful thing about picking up a hobby is that if it's a social hobby, it will get you in a place where you could potentially meet people over a mutual interest, right? So that's why, like in the beginning, I was even saying like I'm really keen on putting myself in places and spaces where I can get to know new people and get to know new mindsets and ways of doing things. So,
gotcha. I like that. And in terms of new spaces that you've entered, to my understanding, fairly recently, running clubs. Which like,
I promise it's for the right reasons. It's for the right reasons.
I was about to say, can't even say it without people thinking, what are the reasons that you go to a running club?
No, to be healthy, you know. Like I always loved her. I hate running actually. To be honest, like it's just like I start the runs and I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like what the hell? But what basically happened around that time, I think it was like last year, I started playing football again. Right? I made some friends and they started inviting me to play. And I was like, oh, let me try and get my fitness a little bit, up to standard. So I kind of got tired of just like going to the gym all the time because it was a closed space. And I thought maybe today I'll just go for a run just to kind of clear out my mind. I was shit at it. Obviously, if you don't run distances for a long time and all of a sudden you just say, I'm going to do a long run, it's like, it's going to hit you. But there was something about it that I really enjoy that was like, let me try again and then actually seeing progress, because it becomes very addictive quickly. Because, if you have any of the apps that kind of like track your runs, like Nike Run Club or Strava or whatever, like it literally tells you, it's almost like a game, because when you beat the time that you've done, it's like, congratulations, you set a new PR on the time X, Y, and Z. So you're like, whoa, I want to imagine they should do this for the gym. Like, oh, congratulations, you lift more weight than you ever lift before.
Yeah.
What would that be? Like something like that, because like gamifying things is very important to kind of keep you going, because like it gets you the engagement with it. But yeah, so basically the interesting part of like, as I was saying, of you getting into new spaces by getting to know new people and how everything kind of goes full circle. Like this is another full circle moment for me, because going back to the YouTube guys, Night Ride and Mark, my friend, so they invited me to go over to Poland where they're based, and they operate and do, just think Tokyo Drift, but in Poland. Basically, nice. It's super sick. If you guys like cars, you should really check that out. And just by virtue of me liking to be with them in that space and just kind of supporting them in what they were doing, I was there filming some behind the scenes content, like just with my phone, doing clips and stuff. And I remember that at the time I started a new job, still like digital marketing, whatever. And like I was getting to know some people, and I exchanged like details with a friend that organized this boxing event. Right. He saw my Instagram and he saw that I had clips of me filming what the guys did in their event. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, would you like to just come to my event and film something? I'll just give you a backstage pass or whatever. And I was like, that's sick. Okay, that's super random. Like, I've never been to a boxing event. So I was like, cool, I'll go. And it was super nice. He was super welcoming. He set up the whole thing, and I got there and like I had a really good time. And in the midst of some of the fights, I saw a guy in there that was Portuguese. And like we had a conversation, and like I filmed a couple of clips. I was like, yeah, give me your Insta, I'll send you the clips, right? And then bearing in mind, still within the running thing, at the time I was running by myself. But then I saw that because, him being a boxer and stuff, like he was like training. And then he posted this one time that he went to a run club that was quite close to me. And at the time, maybe it was him and like, I don't know, like maybe 10, 20 people, like not even, right? And I was like, whoa, that looks pretty big or whatever. And so I asked him like, so how do you guys run? Like, do I need to maybe pay for something? I was like, no, like we just, Thursdays we run on a track and Sundays we run in North Greenwich or whatever is like free. Like, so you should just like pop up. And I was like, okay, cool. I can't, this was around like kind of Christmas time. I was away and I was like, cool. When I come back, I'll join you guys. I'll try and see how it is to actually run with other people. Again, going for the social aspect of it. So then when I decide to go, he gets injured. And like for 2 months, I don't see him. So I'm there and like I'm coming in and I don't know nobody. I remember my first run, there was like 60 people. And like, can you imagine like, going into a club, for example, and you just don't know nobody and you're kind of there like, it felt so random at first, but everyone was kind of friendly, but you could feel already a little bit cliquey. Like they know each other and you're there trying to make conversation with someone. It's like,
You say 16 or 60?
60. At
Okay,
this
yeah.
point, like, so
60.
he went, like, when I saw him doing it, and this was like maybe November or October time, it was like maybe like 10, 15 people. Like, it seemed like a reasonable number, but like, it's a good enough number that you can still comfortable go and talk to someone, right? But when you get somewhere and there's 60 random people that you've never met, it's like, this is awkward. You know what I mean? But it was so important for me to not be deterred at that moment because I was like, look, nobody owes you anything. Just because you're a new person in the space, they shouldn't come to you. You need to show that you're open and try to approach other people in a polite way. Don't interrupt people, whatever. But like, just show that you're open. Like, hey, how's it going? Like, it's my first time in here. If you guys been before, like, talk. You know, and I fully appreciate that it might be harder for other people than others, but like in that moment for me, it was really like, because I think I went twice, and the second time I think maybe I just had a really bad day, and I was like, oh man, I don't want to go because like I don't know nobody, and I felt a little bit like. But the third time when I really tried, then I started seeing a couple of faces that I had seen before, and I was like, hey, okay, you guys came today again, and like. Then I started building up, and like I started this in January. We've been consistent. Now we're in August, right? Whereas before we had 60 people on a Sunday running together, now we have 300 people, right? So there's something about being in that beginning and like making an effort, like, and sticking to it that really made a big difference. So I understand that like a lot of people are kind of like, oh yeah, you're going there for the wrong reasons. Come on, of course, we all like seeing beautiful women. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's a plus, not necessarily the reason as to why for me, you know? So, but yeah, like again, all of this came from me technically going downstairs and asking that kid, can I try your skateboard? Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because
The
like I
preference.
went out of my way to go and talk to someone, then I met someone that later on connected me to something. Like, everything is connected. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And something interesting I wanted to pick up on was, when you're saying you're like, effectively making friends, which sounds cringy,
Yeah.
but that is effectively the process. Is like you're making friends, building connections. Is the way that there's like an element of momentum to it, in terms of there are some people who, sometimes you get lucky and you meet people the first time and you instantly like just hit it off, and you instantly click. Or sometimes you meet people and you don't hit it off and you're actively like, I fuck this guy. Yeah. I really like whenever I've like gotten to know someone and it's somehow challenged, whatever box I consciously or unconsciously put them in my head. It's like a very satisfying thing to be able to, see the hidden depths of someone and to get like momentum in that like friendship or connection. Yeah, so it's something I always think about whenever I go into these spaces and don't immediately hit it off with a group of people. Not to say that I've been to the running club in any way, but at some point, maybe.
Join me. I'm gonna convert another one. No, but I think it's very interesting what you're saying because it's so easy to just paint a person straight away without getting to know them. Again, going back to what we were saying about giving grace, like I don't know you yet. I don't know if you're having a bad day. I don't know if you're having a bad week. Maybe you're gonna give me a weird energy that normally you wouldn't. I still think that people, to an extent, like your what's a good word to use in this case? I don't know. Your essence doesn't really change, like because you are who you are, but like you can improve somewhat or mold what you present yourself with, not in a bad way, right? But when people say, oh no, I'm just a Libra, like women love doing this stuff, like no, like okay, yeah, maybe you have some predestinate things that come with you, but like you can still work to change a little bit of those things and make them more palatable, right? So whenever I go into a space, as you're saying, and there's new people, like I'm always gonna give them like, give them an opportunity. Like show me really what you're about. And I think that maybe as a man, like, because funny enough, I was having this conversation with a female friend of mine, and she was like, "Oh, like I have a conversation within the first 5 minutes. I know if I should give you a chance or not, and then I just like bye." And I was like, I appreciate that because as a woman, probably you get approached so much, and it gets so jarring that you have to deal with all of these people that you feel like you're not my vibe. I don't want to do this anymore. But as a man, I feel like you're kind of expected to carry a conversation, period. Right. So I think being a good conversationalist in these sort of spaces is important. Like listen to what the person is saying, try to find some common ground. Something that I find really interesting as well. Like whenever I meet a person, like if this is our first time meeting, I try to make sure that we leave something memorable so I can have a callback when I see you the next time. Because if I'm having the same conversation with you again after, say, for example, in the running club, the typical conversations are, oh, it's your first time here. Yeah. Oh, how was your run? Great. Like, if I see you next week and I ask you the same thing, I already failed. Because, like, you didn't make yourself memorable in any shape, way, or form. Like, try, if you are interested in, obviously, like, try and go a little bit more in depth. Like, ask the person how they are. Like, oh, like, what do you do outside of this? How did you find about this? So, like, because now I'm giving you an opportunity for you to show me a bit of your personality and what you're actually interested in. If this is all you're interested in, cool. But like, at least I get to gauge what else I can kind of pull, and I get to see if we are compatible to then build a friendship, right? So
Yeah. And interesting that you said oftentimes when you're first meeting someone, you very naturally find some kind of common interest or common ground, which I very much agree with. Maybe a contrast to that is sometimes when I meet someone for the first time, I find something that I disagree with them on, which, obviously can go a bad route if you're like debating with someone who basically doesn't want to have a debate. So naturally you want to steer clear of that. But I do think if you can find something that you disagree with someone, like recognize it and then navigate the conversation either respectfully through it, or collegially through it, or navigate it away, then what I quite like about that, purely from like the kind of from my point of view, is I'm like, I feel like I can trust this person a little bit more, because I think if someone is agreeing with everything that you're saying or doesn't want to say what they disagree with, then it's not that like, oh, it's not, this is a bad person, they're a liar, but it's like, I'm gonna have to think about what you say a little bit more. Whereas if someone is like willing to be a bit open about what they disagree with, then it just that ever so slightly makes you think, yeah, okay, so this person's like open to disagreeing, and it kind of gives you a bit more respect for them, and also means like, okay, when they say something, it's probably more likely than not that they genuinely mean it.
yeah, it's like, are you really being you right now, or are you trying to be the version that you think that I want to see right now? Right. So I definitely appreciate and I resonate with that point as well, because it's so easy for you to, and I feel like everybody kind of falls into it to a certain extent, like that people pleasing narrative, right? So like, I got into a new space, I want people to like me, so I don't want to go against the grain and like cause trouble. But there's definitely a way to approach it and to be able to have those type of conversations. Like, we don't always need to agree on things. Like you said, I totally agree with that. Ironically, yeah, yeah, I read that. Yeah. But there's this quote. I don't know who said it, but like it stuck with me. Let me see if I don't butcher it. But the sign of an educated mind is the ability to entertain a thought without accepting it.
100%, 100%. And I also think you perfectly said the quote. Like that is it. Yeah, I really agree with that. Very
Because
much so.
like, to me, it just really sticks. Like, yeah, maybe I don't agree with your point of view, and I don't know where it's coming from, but like, tell me more. Why do you think that way? Right? And I think that when we kind of try and find a middle ground, try to actually have a conversation, even if I don't agree with you, all I want to do at this point, if I have a strong stance on something, is just plant a little seed, not necessarily a doubt, but like something for you to take home and just be like, actually, maybe you had a point on that, or that person to do something like that for me as well, because I'm always trying to learn. I'm always wanting to be in a position where I'm going to be talking to someone that is going to not necessarily just challenge for the sake of challenge, but like, give me something like intellectually stimulating. Like, let's have a conversation. Like, if we don't see things alike, I want to know why. I think it's very important for you to just kind of like try to be a bit more empathetic and understand where people are coming from.
I like that. So then thinking about maybe the last 5 years of your life, maybe last 10 if you really want to go that far, what has been the biggest change in opinions that you've had? What is something that you've just drastically, or maybe not drastically, but just significantly, it feels like a real change where you're like, fuck, I wish I could speak to myself 5 years ago and be like, hammer this home. Like, listen to the advice this person is giving, or do this thing.
I'm going to flip that a little bit, not necessarily to evade your question, but I like the fact that you said, if you could go back and talk to that person in time, like your version of self, to see if they would like switch their brain earlier. I think it's really important to just allow yourself to be that fuck up, because that personal moment that you went through, or that belief that you had, like, it was there for a reason until something came and challenged your view, and then he allowed you to grow in a different way. So I feel like you can't really skip the journey, because if you skip the journey, then the personal development is lost, right? It's important to have that. But I would say nothing like in terms of an ideal or something that changed really within me, but to me, it's just really that thought process of being like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try something and not look cool doing it. It's okay to, those people don't like you. It's fine, right? I felt like I was so caught up on the idea of like, I gotta be like this. I gotta be cool and people need to like me and stuff. And like, it's a little childish thing that you're kind of holding on to because you're looking for validation. And once you kind of start growing a little bit more and you start really realizing that, like, look, if I like myself and I'm good with me and I feel like I'm acting in the most integral, or with the most integrity possible, like I'm acting in a way that it's, conducting myself with integrity, it's okay. Like, people will have their opinions. Not everybody needs to like you. Not everybody needs to think that you're the shit. Like, it's fine because you are you. Like, to me, that's the most important thing that I feel like switched in terms of mindset.
I like that. And then thinking about yourself in 5 years' time, what would be the advice that you give yourself now?
Oh, that's a good way to flip it for sure. I think that I've kind of been putting that mindset on myself, which is literally just not to kind of go back to the whole failing thing. It's just like, just try more things, just fail at more things. Because like, if not now, when? You know what I mean? And I feel like one thing that a lot of people kind of tend to get stuck up on is, oh man, like if I start now, it's going to take too long and I'll be this age when I fit. Yeah, but if you start later, then you're just going to be older. Like, just do it now. The best time to do something was yesterday. The best second time is now. Like, just do it whilst you still can. And also, don't take things for granted. I think that the fact that, I think it's quite funny because a lot of people have been asking me like, dude, are you trying to be an athlete or what? Like, I go play football and then I play basketball and then I go dance and then I go run and then like, yo, you everywhere. And I was like, yes, because I still can. You know what I mean? Like, I'm turning 31 now, not old by any means, but it's crazy when you see any type of sports, like the Olympics just went and they're like, oh my God, he's such an amazing athlete at the tail end of his career. And the dude is like 29. It's like, what the hell, man? I was like, wow. Like, so like my thought process is like, whilst I can still be of, good mental strength and I'm still fit, like, I'm gonna go out there and try and do things whilst my body allows me to, because if you don't use it, basically you lose it. But yeah,
100%. And then what's next for you on the horizon? What's next for you on the horizon? What would you like to do next, either in a creative space or in another kind of space?
I think that right now, like something that I'm really consciously thinking about, like I want to really start working towards, the whole aspect of building a family, of creating a safe space for me and for my loved ones. I think that living in a city like London is very difficult because everything is super fast paced and it's hard to actually slow down and find someone who's willing to take the time to then kind of build something together, right? And I think that when you live in a place where everything feels so discardable, like it's just very easy for people to be like, I don't like this or I don't like that, so I won't give you time of day and I'll go do something else. Like, you have too many options, and that is also a problem. Is the paradox of choice, right? Ideally, really, I would like to just meet a person, settle down, but then that comes with a whole nother set of questions of like, what is this person going to be like? What should I be like? So we're actually compatible. Like, so that's something that has been in my mind. Like, obviously, as I said, like going 30, 31 now, I'm thinking it's about time maybe to just kind of settle down and figure something out. Right. But
What is your hot take on the modern dating scene?
it, it's not even a hot take, but it's just bad out there, man. It's just bad. I think that honestly, it's just bad because people do not know how to communicate. And when people, like, let's say, for example, women would be telling you, like, oh no, I just want him to be honest and say the truth. Like, do you? Do you really want that? Like, when somebody tells you something about yourself, are you mature enough to be able to take it and receive it in a positive way? If it's a constructive criticism. And I say this for men or for women, right? Because oftentimes people say that they want one thing, but then they behave in a different way. And this is where it becomes super confusing for anyone in the dating space, because you have too many options. People don't often say what they actually mean. And this lack of just being genuine. And it's okay as well if you meet somebody and then all of a sudden you change your mind. Why aren't people okay with that? Like, just be honest. It's okay. I think that if a lot of people would just stop and kind of worked on themselves to not be so easily offended, to not have their ego bruised, it would be so much different, right? Because it's basically a case of, if someone is feeling something towards you, it could either be projection, it could just be that they're not that into you, which is okay. Because if you're into yourself and you love yourself, like as I was saying before, like if you get to that space mentally and that area of growth of your personal life, like, well, I'm fine and I'm okay with myself. That's not to say that you shouldn't have accountability, but it's super important for you to just be, confident of who you are and be honest with the people that you're dealing with.
For sure. I think that aspect of people being in different seasons of their life is sometimes underappreciated, in terms of people being, open or receptive to one thing or another thing, versus where they're at in other moments sometimes clashes with, either our conscious or unconscious idea of there being like one person.
Yeah.
So then what would be the advice that you would give to your sons and daughters? I don't know how many you're gonna have.
Oh my days! No,
Sounds very biblical, but
I was like,
yeah, there you go.
sons and daughters. What gems would you leave them? No, I think I would really like raising a child in this environment right now. I think it's super important for you to actually allow them to instill a sense of self-worth, right? Because no one can tell you anything about yourself if you know who you are. And I think that a lot of times, like, we're growing up and we don't really know who we are. It's normal because we're trying to figure things out. So people don't spend enough time even by themselves to reflect on their personal growth and who they want to be and where they want to go. Like, even just these basic questions that you're asking me, like, would you see yourself in this state? So I should probably be thinking more about that, but I'm living day by day, which is not a bad thing. But like, ultimately, it's good for you to have a goal that you're aiming towards, because then you're walking in the right direction, right? Even if it's slow, you're still progressing in the right direction. So I think that that's one of the things that I would really like to put as a good solid foundation for my kids, like the aspect of like, you have to be a kind person and you have to know how to love yourself. You can't be kind to others if you're not kind to yourself. Yeah.
Good. I like that, man. Cool. Unreal, bro. Appreciate your time.
Oh man, thank you. A lot of waffling, but hey, we did it.